In a very quick nutshell on Medicaid planning, my name's Charlie Gipple, and I am the owner of CG Financial Group, your IMO for annuities, life, and long-term care. Here's what Medicaid planning is. The state of Iowa, for instance, similar to all the other states in the country, have certain assets that one has to, or has certain levels of assets that one has to have less than in order to qualify for Medicaid. And Medicaid is completely different than Medicare. Medicare is health insurance for those 65 and older. Medicaid covers long-term care and is for the financially needy. That's what Medicaid is for the poor, so to speak, and it also covers long-term care, which Medicare does not, unbeknownst to a lot of people, generally does not. Medicare does not cover long-term care. So how do our clients qualify for Medicaid? First and foremost, I would hope that Medicaid in your situation is never even an issue. Why? Because you had prepared. You bought a long-term care policy, and that long-term care policy fully takes care of any long-term care event that you ever have. But here is the process of Medicaid if you failed to prepare. And I get this a couple times a year. Charlie, mom went to the nursing home or she had a stroke, heaven forbid. They never had a long-term care policy. So dad and mom is wondering, what the heck do? They have $1 million portfolio. They never bought long-term care insurance. They just failed to plan. What do we do? This is where getting them qualified for Medicaid is pretty darn important. And this is actually a strategy. And it's nothing illegal. It's not hiding money. The state knows everything that goes on here. But here's the process. You have non-countable assets, or I'll put it over here, non-countable assets. The state says, hey, these non-countable assets, we don't count them. We don't care. So your house, you can have a $500,000 house. You could have a car. The clothes on your back, whatever. We're not going to limit the amount of non-countable assets that you have in order to qualify for Medicaid. But it's accountable assets that you have to have less than $2,000 in the state of Iowa for the person going to the nursing home, for instance. There's also a community spouse allowance. So let's say she goes to the nursing home and she is married. Is he allowed unlimited countable assets? No. The state says, hey, you cannot be a multi-gazillionaire spouse and have both of you qualify or have her qualify for Medicaid. You're the spouse. If you're a multi-gazillionaire, then you're responsible for whatever the nursing home expenditures are. So therefore, they have limits on both of these. The institutionalized spouse in the state of Iowa, $2,000 that they have to have their assets less than. The community spouse, around $158,000. So they have $1 million portfolio. What does the Medicaid planning process, I hate to call it planning, what does the Medicaid crisis management process look like? It's how do we get their countable assets down to less than, what did I say, 2,000 her, 158,000 him, so 160,000. They have $1 million portfolio. How do we get rid of $840,000 of those assets above and beyond what they are allowed in order for her to qualify for Medicaid? That's where we're able to move 840 grand, for example. We do the math. An attorney, you must have an elder law attorney work with the advisor hand in hand when it comes to this process. An elder law attorney is worth their weight in gold. It may cost you 5 grand, 10 grand, et cetera, but I'll tell you, it's worth their weight in gold if you get an elder law attorney to help with all this math. And dealing with the Medicaid office of the state, it's crazy what these guys have to deal with. So we take 840 grand and move it over into non-countable column. How do we do that? How do we just have IRAs and all that stuff go to the non-countable column? That's where a Medicaid compliant annuity can come into play. And by the way, I said something that may pique the interest of a lot of you. Whoa, IRAs? So if she's off to the nursing home, she has an $800,000 IRA. Are you saying that that can go into a Medicaid compliant annuity? Well, what happens then? Well, that annuity gets paid out to him. Really, her IRA, that annuity gets paid out to him. Yes, many of these Medicaid compliant annuity carriers will allow for this. Now, is that considered her income or his income? In the state of Iowa allows for that income to be his, which is very, very important. And that's called the name on the check rule. The state of Iowa abides by the name on the check rule. Whoever's on the check, that's the income that that person has. But I'm getting too technical here. Just know, and there are a lot of caveats. Does a Medicaid office come back and try to recover those assets that she owes the state after both of them die? Yeah, they do. But that's where an irrevocable trust may have been set up to protect those assets so the heirs can get it versus the state. There's a lot of stuff here to take into consideration, but in short, the process of qualifying for Medicaid, even though you may have $1 million in assets, is this. You deflate the asset balloon by moving a chunk of that into a Medicaid compliant annuity, for example. You get it below that $160,000 in my example. The state takes a snapshot of all the assets and says, yep, they qualify. They're less than 158 for him, less than the 2,000 for her. They qualify. There are also income requirements. I'm not going to get into that, but just know that there are income maximums for her. But all right, they take a snapshot, and then what happens? That annuity reinflates their asset balloon because that annuity is going to go to pay back him over a period of a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 4 years, 10 years, whatever, depending on the calculus that I, the financial advisor and your elder law attorney, do. So that in a nutshell is the process of Medicaid planning, or better said, crisis management with Medicaid. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Also remember to give me a thumbs up as well as subscribe to this video. That's a very complicated topic in a short period of time.